Hello and welcome to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find the Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review the show. A reminder, we're streaming live on Sportsnet's YouTube channel and airing live on Sportsnet 360 Monday to Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm your host, William Liu, joined once again by producer and co-host Alex Wong. And we have on the line Sportsnet's very own Michael Grange. What's going on? This is the front desk calling, Mr. Grange. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Your room
I'm good.
service
I'm
is
glad
available.
you got a decent connection. So
11th floor. Grange is on the 11th floor.
Why are you doxing my man Grange? Come on, man. What are you doing? How you doing, Grange?
I'm under an assumed name, so no one can find me. Don't worry.
Okay, nice. Yeah, how's Salt Lake City? What's your go-to in Salt Lake?
I don't have one. I like Salt Lake. It's pretty, right? Like you can see the mountains and the snow on the mountains, so that's very nice.
You can see that when the plane's just coming down, man. You still got to see it after. Yeah.
Say that again, sorry.
You can just see it from the plane when you're arriving in.
Yeah, but you're walking over to the arena. The mountains are in the background, so it's nice. It's very cold here, though. It's quite cold. I'm a little disappointed to go from Phoenix, which was not exactly hot, but kind of sweatshirt weather, to this is legit like Toronto cold here, so that's a little bit of a downer.
Grange, not to scare you, but Friday in Toronto, it's gonna be minus 14.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, Grange is used to that.
Aren't you going to be in Houston that night? So I guess
I think he's coming back. Aren't you coming back, Grange, after
you
Utah?
know what? I'm literally going to be making up my mind in the next hour.
Oh, okay.
So the weekend games are on TSN. But
the other network, yeah. We don't say their name on the show. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
But the other side of it is if there is going to be a move made in the next few days, it might be worth being around. So just going to flip a coin on that one and see.
All right. Well, Grange, you teed yourself up essentially because you have written a trade deadline primer. It's up on obviously Sportsnet.ca along with all of your work. And yeah, a lot of great stuff to sort of touch on. I think first off, just even describing the atmosphere of sort of the recent games here, where obviously there's been a lot of various league executives attending, scouting, obviously the Raptors scouting their opponents as well. And you're also literally seeing shots of like Masai walking into a tunnel with
It could just be grabbing the medium meal, but that's all I'm saying, man.
They weren't grabbing the medium meal.
That's what I'm saying.
I promise you that.
Eye test.
All right, well,
the medium meal in Phoenix was not worth grabbing. I can't guarantee you they ate whatever the team was eating.
I mean, Toronto sometimes too. But yeah, go ahead, Grange.
So as kind of Will was alluding to, that scene, and you see it in Toronto too. That scene before a game. There's always a lot of a handful of guys from other teams around, or the opposing GM might be in town, and so there's that kind of stuff happens. But it's the intensity of it in that kind of hour and a half before game time. It's just really been noticeable on this trip, and and you kind of look at where the Raptors have gone on this trip. Sacramento, Golden State, Portland, and Phoenix the other night. Now Utah, and on all four of those stops so far, you could run the trade machine and go, yeah, there's some interesting moves that could be made between these two teams, and it's pretty obvious seeing how Bobby and Masai are interacting with their counterparts. There's good relationships with all those organizations. I'm not suggesting anything's brewing because of that, but in Phoenix, that clip with Masai and James Jones walking off, like I was talking with Masai, kind of at that moment, and James Jones emerged, and they just went poof, they were gone. So I don't know if they were making dinner plans or not, but definitely an energy around this team that's a little different because of obviously the time of the year, also the way the team has gone. And, I can't really recall a deadline where the Raptors have been the headline team, apart from, it's usually, it's Lakers Knicks on the acquiring side, but in terms of a team that people seem to really be zeroing in on, the Raptors seem to be it. So it's definitely been a vibe, as the kids say.
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious in terms of, how the players are sort of handling that, how they're internalizing it, because I think for them, you clearly see that they've been playing hard in this road trip. I mean, maybe the Warriors game was just kind of like they couldn't defensively get organized, but I think there's been clear effort in a lot of these games. Unfortunately, they're 2-2 on this road trip. They've really had to, do better. Maybe they'll have more chances here to potentially win out. Does that even necessarily matter or really inform the front office in this direction? Because I think for a lot of fans who are thinking about the trade deadline and sort of the players that may or may not go, I think there's a real sense of attachment to all the guys here, even though it clearly hasn't really worked. But we've seen a lot of good things from a lot of good players. So yeah, I guess my question is really just like, how are the players handling all this?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably varies, right? And I've asked kind of each of the kind of principal guys that question, and of course they're going to say, as you would expect, like we don't focus on it too much, and we're used to it, it happens, and all of that. And I think so nobody's claiming that it's really messing with them or anything like that. But it is an interesting environment, and because I do think that the energy around the team has kind of changed in the past few weeks, or maybe even a little bit more, both on and off the floor. And I think that's corresponded with a slightly better on-court product. Like, it's not like they've been tearing it up, but they've kind of stopped the bleeding, so to speak. And and I think I'm not sure if that's helped or clouded the decision-making picture. I would say this. I mean, I think had this team kept playing, getting the results they were getting, but also the way they were playing, I think there was a selfishness that was creeping into the game, and there was kind of a chemistry issue that was that was kind of manifesting itself a little bit. I think if that had gone on, at that point the decision gets really easy. Okay, fine. If you're not going to try and pull on the same rope here, then we'll just turn the page. The fact that I think that's cleaned up a little bit, and I think you've got better performances from more players. I think I don't know how much difference that does make or should make. The goal here isn't to win, isn't to finish 11th or 12th or 9th. It's Masai Ujiri, that's his mantra, right, is to win and win big. And, when we've talked about this before, like, they're pretty healthy. They are, I think, playing a little better, but it seems to kind of level them in around 500. And I don't know if that's worth keeping your team together and going into a luxury tax for.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's definitely fair. I mean, it makes a lot of sense why the Raptors would be, at the eye of the storm here, and everyone's sort of linking themselves to the Raptors and some of the players they have available. It is interesting thinking about the idea of, maybe the Raptors haven't necessarily had the chemistry that you consider, that you maybe even have taken for granted in recent years. The Raptors have really been a very cohesive group. I mean, it's not to say that there's never any issues, but for the most part, the Raptors, compared to most NBA teams, have been smooth sailing for like a decade now. And I guess when you're watching the product, you can kind of see it, but you never really fully know until you really are talking to the players or talking to the coaches or talking to the execs. And yeah, I guess, Grange, I'm just curious, like, how do they even get past that? Like, was there sort of like a moment where they sort of got together and were like, okay, look, listen, obviously we're not performing well this season, but can we play together and play more cohesively? Was there a big moment for that? Or is it just sort of like guys sort of, I don't know, realize that everyone's playing terrible and we're all going to get traded if we don't?
I think there's, I'm kind of trying to poke away at that, but a couple of things come to mind. I mean, I think there was a stretch probably 3 weeks, a month ago, and Nick Nurse came out and I think he was publicly pretty hard on his group, and kind of made public the fact he was hard on them behind the scenes as well, and I know that was done with the explicit support of Masai Ujiri. Like, that was something that people were on the same page with. I think that's probably one factor. I think another factor is when your general manager goes to Paris to go see the number one pick. You better pay attention, right? Like, I mean, if you don't read something a little bit into that, then you probably don't have your ear close enough to the ground of your job. And I think, also, like, when the team is struggling and things are kind of going a little unevenly, and all of a sudden your team and your name is kind of part of the whole trade fodder discussion, maybe you kind of pause and wonder if that's something really what you want, and Fred VanVleet, like, I don't think he wants to get traded. I know Pascal Siakam doesn't want to get traded. I'm pretty sure OG Anunoby, if he had his druthers, would probably want to stay in Toronto. And I think Gary Trent Jr. has found a really good place to play professional basketball here. And so I think maybe there is a little bit to that. We're like, okay, well, maybe we better. I think when I talked to Fred when we were in Minnesota, he said, well, the better we play, the less likely someone gets shipped out of here. And maybe it's as simple as that.
Yeah, Grange, you mentioned talking to all the guys about this. And, obviously one of the guys you talked to was OG. You had a riveting Q&A with him that I'm still working my way through. I know it was a long read. What was that? What was that? I think people are always interested just about interactions with OG because they seem so rare. What was that? Like, what did you take away? Because obviously we're reading, his responses, and I think he had a comment on the broadcast too the other day that some of his comments were being taken out of context. What was your read on just like your interaction with him on all these things?
Yeah, I mean, OG is kind of what you see is what you get. Like, he's not like all that differently, one-on-one as he is. We've seen him in some of the scrums that are pretty fun and amusing, and I just felt like he was being talked about so much. Like, you got to kind of bring the subject up with him. And the problem with OG is, your questions end up probably, the ratio is about 10-1 in terms of who's doing the speaking, and he's good at that, right? Like, he just kind of you end up rambling, and his answer is usually pretty short, and he did mention something. We haven't had a chance to kind of really go over it, but I think he was, maybe he felt it was taken out of context. I mean, I quoted him directly, so I mean, I don't know what else I can do, but I just think that maybe people were reading into his comments an ambiguity about what he felt about playing here, which I don't think is the case. I mean, I think if his choice was, I think he'd play here in Toronto. I think at the same time, I don't think it's a secret that he would and probably is justified in wanting a bigger role. I mean, this was part of the preseason discussion. Nick Nurse would talk about him meeting with OG and talking about, things he could do to kind of enhance his role in the offense and et cetera. So, and all this is in the context of, I think, people got to understand in the NBA, right? Like you have only so many cracks to really nail a contract, and and the difference between being a guy who's kind of a really, really good role player and kind of on the cusp of all NBA discussion or all NBA defense discussions, which is where OG is, and being kind of a high usage scorer who also defends and is kind of borderline all-star, maybe an all-star. Like, the differences are real. We're talking 10s, 20s, 30s, $50 million. And, and I think when that is put into context a little bit, I don't think it's guys, and I'm not talking about OG in this example, or it's not like guys are stamping their feet or kind of miserable. It's it's where and how and what can you do to kind of maximize your opportunity while you're in the league. And so a long way of saying, I mean, it was OG and I are fine, and he's a really, I hope it does come across, like, I mean, he's a really sweet, polite, nice person. He just doesn't speak in extended paragraphs. That's
fair. I would love to hear an OG podcast, actually. That's actually maybe during his career, maybe post-career, I would love an OG podcast. Yeah, I mean, in the sense of the OG thing, because obviously Shams brought it out yesterday that the Suns are, interested, and, I'm sure tons of other teams in the league are interested as well. I mean, maybe that just coincides with the timing in terms of obviously Toronto was in Phoenix for these discussions. What do you make of that link potentially with Phoenix and OG?
Yeah, I mean, there's something to it. I think all these teams that want to win, would have to look seriously at OG, for all the reasons we know very, very well. And that's always been the thing with OG is you could do the exercise. I've kind of done it in my mind. He would start, I think, on every team in the league, right? Like, I mean, and I'm talking like you take your top 10. I think he would start on Boston, right? I think he would start on New Orleans. I think he would start on Memphis. I think he would start on Denver, right? Like, I mean, it's so there's your top 3 or 4 teams right there, probably. He would start on the Bucks. He would start on the Sixers, right? So there's not many players that really fall into that category, and I think that's why if you're a team that wants to win and thinks they can win, and there's a chance you can get a player like that, you have to be very serious about it. And and I think in that sense, that's why the Raptors are in a really good position. I think they've got an opportunity to kind of, if they want to make that decision, they should be able to help their whole program going forward. But it's not a decision you can make lightly because the minute you trade OG Anunoby, you're hoping to get another one. I mean, I think I can say the fact that Precious Achiuwa has, we also saw how well he played after the All-Star break last year, but there was a little lightning in the bottle with that, with his three-point shooting and stuff. Like, it was like, this is interesting. But the way he's played the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks, it seems very sustainable. It looks like a different player. And I think that the fact that he's shown that there's a real platform to his game might give the Raptors a little more, I don't know, not confidence, but they might feel a little bit better that they could make a trade involving OG Anunoby and not have, a big crater in their lineup that they'd never be able to fill.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because I think with Precious, the question there is like, okay, you could definitely see a path where if one of the starters were moved, that he would move into the starting lineup. But the question is sort of like, is he going to develop, I think, in the future as a wing or more as a big? I think there's probably more potential for him to continue developing as a wing. And if the Raptors want to get a true big in the center, I think Precious can actually play alongside him, although it would be a bit of a change in role for Precious. But, to that idea, I noticed that one little tidbit in your story. You said that DeAndre Ayton has some fans in the Raptors organization. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. That's an idea.
Yeah, I mean, well, why wouldn't there be, right? Like, I mean, he's, when
I
you
don't
see
know.
him
It
in
seems
person,
like people are kind of split on Ayton. I think he's definitely been a productive player. He's been part of winning. Obviously, he was very good for the Suns when they made their push to the finals. But I think there's always this sort of like, okay, maybe he doesn't play as hard, or maybe he doesn't dominate the way a number one pick should, or the typical stuff that you hear with bigs also. And I think the biggest thing is that they passed up on Luka for him, which, I mean, like, he's got to eat that L at some point.
Yeah, no, there's a few teams that are at least they didn't draft Bagley, right? So,
yeah, well, damn.
but no, I think is he perfect? No, and there's but I think if you're someone who evaluates talent, the guy is, he's 24. He runs as well as any big in the league. His mid-range touch is as good as any big in the league. He's consistent, and I think an interesting way to look at that is a lot of times when you're talking about getting a big, it's like, well, you get a big who can kind of guard the rim and set some screens for you. Let's just say Jakob Poeltl, who's a pretty good player.
No, Grange, this is the one time we're not going to talk Jakob Poeltl when we call you.
That's fine. But I mean, can you play a guy who can't shoot, can't space, and can't make free throws? So in the fourth quarter of playoff games, well, probably not. So, and then you look at as much as the game's becoming smaller and a lot of bigs can't stay on the floor, Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic seem to be finding their way to be pretty successful. And not to say DeAndre Ayton's in that category, but he is 24. And I think that's sort of why you kind of look at if there is an opportunity to acquire a player like that. I don't know if there is. But if there was, you'd have to take it seriously because, you'd have to believe that you can develop his game and develop with him, and all of a sudden you've got a player on your roster that very few teams in the NBA can match.
Yeah, I think the trouble maybe with Ayton is just that the money is obviously going to be big, right? He's averaging, I think, $33 million per year for the next 3 years. And if you add, Ayton to the lineup, for example, for next year, and you take out OG's salary, and of course you probably have to add other pieces to make the money work, but it would put the Raptors quite close to, the luxury tax, especially considering that they also have some other pending free agents. And that's where your note on Gary Trent Jr. I think we're in the Raptors fan base, like we're all watching Gary and we're like, wow, what a great player. Right now, the Raptors have so little shooting. Gary's able to provide you that timely scoring. He's even improved at the rim this season, which I feel like has been pretty significant for his overall game because you don't want to be just a shooter. He's obviously got a bit of a mid-range game as well. But I think when you hear the numbers and you're like, well, you reported that it would be in the 20 million range rather than something like Tyler Hero or Jordan Poole who are north of 30 million. That seems fairly reasonable. Like let's sign that deal now, right?
Yeah, and I think the context there is as a free agent, right?
Okay.
So I think that's the real distinction there is, and when I was talking to the person I was talking with was from another team, and that's the point they made, right? Is and talking to some other agents and stuff like that. The real way to get paid, and this relates to Fred and it relates to Gary, is you stay on your own team. They're the ones who have the means to pay the most. In theory, if you leave, then they're the ones who can't backfill. Like, they really are almost obligated to pay you because if they don't pay you, then there's no way for them to recoup the player. But and so I think as it relates to Gary, this idea that he's going to be a free agent and all of a sudden he's going to get 4 years, 120. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it just seems a little bit unlikely based on the landscape. And, and so all of a sudden would he, all of a sudden if the Raptors could do it at, an extension and it's, maybe 20, just north of 20, maybe 4 years, 100, 4 years, high 90s, something like that. Well, that seems like a reasonable contract for what he contributes, especially in a rising cap. So I think that's the context. And I think broader context, one thing that Bobby and Masai have done really, really well is with their own free agents is kind of gauge the market. Guys go to the market. They think they might be able to get X, Y, or Z. And in the end, they come back and they sign a really good deal in Toronto, and it's good for both parties. And that was repeated multiple times with Kyle Lowry. It was repeated with Serge Ibaka. It was repeated with Fred VanVleet. And, I'm not saying that's exactly how it's going to play out with Gary Trent or Fred, but, I think that they have a track record and maybe a certain confidence that they can, kind of maneuver that.
Yeah, Grange, aside from the players too, I know there's some reporting this week just about Nick Nurse, and obviously his contract is up after next season, and Shams had the reporting that there were some, players that have at times been frustrated, with Nick this season. Any of that surprise you?
Well, the contract stuff I had back in January, so that wasn't surprising.
That's a flex. That's a flex.
Damn. No,
Tell him, Grange.
You know what? I saw Grange tweet that right after too. Right after Shams came up with the reporting.
Sometimes you just got it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Put some respect on
But
Grange's
shop at
name.
home, folks. Shop at home.
Nice.
But as far as Nick and some tension with guys on the team, I mean, certainly you've had. I haven't had anything where I could report that. In reading that, I go, yeah, it makes sense. And I don't think it's, the context is always important, right? And Shams has taken a run at Nick a couple of times, so who knows what's going on there. But I think on a team that's losing, that's below expectation, with a group that's been together a long time. 4 years, right? That's an age in the NBA. The idea that there wouldn't be some kind of tension back and forth is probably naive, right? So yeah, I'm sure if Sham's got that, it was pretty sound, and but I don't know if it really reflects on his future. I think the bigger question is going to be what direction the team goes, and I think if there is a pivot to a rebuild, then maybe Nick, is that where he wants to devote the next chunk of his career. I'm not saying he wouldn't, but I'm sure it would be a consideration. I think anytime a coach is going into the last year of his contract, and a coach I think is pretty marketable, right? Like I don't think this is going to be Nick's last NBA contract, whether it's in Toronto or anywhere else. I think I wouldn't say he necessarily has some leverage, but I think it's a natural point where both the player and the team and the coach kind of discuss what's next. So I think it's a situation to monitor, I guess is the way I would put it. But I don't know if it's kind of like front burner.
Yeah, it is interesting because I believe whether it was during media day or maybe even before that, there was that notable quote where, I don't know, Nick's name got floated with the Lakers job, which was open at that time. And I think Masai's exact quote was, they dream like I dream. It was very much like that was
a good one. I remember
that was a good one. Yeah, right. So it was very much like we support Nick and he's going nowhere. So I would be fairly surprised.
I should say that the last time I kind of had a conversation around this topic, like there was no, I didn't get any vibe, any sense that, part of whatever plan is coming is to change coaches. Not saying it's going to things have changed all the time.
Sure. Yeah.
But like I certainly haven't picked up any Nick's the problem. I think there's been an honest understanding that the roster's a bit of the problem. I think chemistry's been a bit of the problem, and has this been Nick's finest year coaching? I don't think anyone would necessarily sign off on that. Not to say it's been he's been I don't say that to throw anyone under the bus. Just that I think if people would evaluate honestly and say it just has been one of those years where nothing has gone quite right, which also makes this whole kind of week kind of difficult because you're evaluating, trying to make big decisions, and nobody wants to do that when your season's kind of in some ways been a series of worst case scenarios. So it's I'm looking forward to February 10th, put it that way.
Yeah. No, it'd be good to know like who's, here and what the direction of the team specifically is. I think it'll just give clarity to both us and also in particular to people watching, because I think there needs to be like an expectation sort of calibration. Just because right now it just seems like people are still expecting them to win, and obviously they're not doing that enough, and it just kind of leads to this endlessly. Grange, last question from me before I pass it off to Alex is just were you a little surprised when that Nick was surprised that OG was rolled out for the road trip? I'm talking about pregame. What was that?
I guess I'm always a little surprised when a coach kind of leaves something ambiguous like that hanging out there.
Right.
Just because for all parties, who really benefits, right? The safest thing is always just to be as boring as possible.
Yes, of course. You could just say like, hey, listen, we gave him some more tests, and we're gonna,
Yeah, like
reevaluate.
He didn't have to say it. I think he knew what he was saying, why he was saying. I think it goes back a little bit to last season. I think OG had that. I believe it was his left thumb or finger. He had, and it really took him out for a long time. And I think that there's a message maybe, or maybe a little bit of a frustration coming through, where the player, OG in this case, is maybe, let's just say, maybe a little more careful about when and how he approaches his return to play. Again, people can read into what they want. Like, I mean, Nick said it. It raised eyebrows. We're talking about it, so he has to wear it. I don't think it's a place for me or you to kind of question a player's health or ability to play. But when the head coach throws it out there, it's definitely catches people's attention.
Yeah. Last one for you, Grange. I think last week when you were on, you guys were you asking Grange about his how much he packs on the road trip?
Yeah, that's right.
And I
Grange's
think
answer was one single
right?
carry-on, which is
and I think that's the
hard to
right
believe.
move, especially with the way the airports are now. Like, you don't want to check no bags or anything.
No.
So how's the luggage holding up?
It's been 10 days,
good.
man.
It's going good. It was a little stressful because my plan was to do some laundry in San Francisco. Downtown San Francisco, unfortunately, is not a place we want to be running around to laundromats. In fact, they were closed. So that wasn't ideal. But I arrived in Portland, and the hotel there had a laundry. So you did one round there, did another one just before I left in Phoenix. And so far, so good. The odors are good. The workout gear is fine.
Oh man.
So yeah, no, I had a little disaster because I've only got like one kind of piece of kind of warm. I got this big bulky green sweatshirt that's kind of like my warm thing, and I did get some pizza stain on it the other day. So that was a bit of a panic.
Oh man, was that the media meal in Phoenix or?
No, that was at a pretty good pizza spot in sort of the Italian area in San Francisco. So
nice.
It was worth it, but yeah.
Cool.
But otherwise, yeah, no, I think I'm going to pull it off.
All right, Grange. We look forward to seeing you back at the arena, I guess, next week.
Yeah, I'll be there.
We'll see which players are back with you, and
I'll be texting you. I'll be texting you almost every day until February 9th.
Yeah, Grange, I'm sure you're you're very, very busy man, so I appreciate your time.
No, it's good to be on with you guys. Thank you.
All right. Okay, we're gonna take a break. Mostly because Grange talked about the odor, and we're like, you know what? We just got to reset here. So I'm your host, Will Luke. That's Alex Wong, and you've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Welcome back to the Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. I'm your host, Wim Liu. Continue to be joined by producer and co-host Alex Wong. Big thanks to Grange for coming on the first half of the program. Second half, Alex is going to run point as he always does. So yeah, what's going on, Alex? What's on your mind?
Yeah, shouts to Grange, by the way, honestly.
Yeah.
From the 11th floor.
I loved him flexing on Shams. That was nice.
No, because
you know what?
Because we read it on Monday, and Shams was said in the article that was like information that people didn't know, right?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't know if Grange does this. In fact, I doubt it. But I'm very much online. I see everything.
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely see everything on Twitter. I see everything on Raptors Reddit. I see everything on Raptors Real GM.
Yeah.
Okay.
YouTube.
YouTube
comments?
less so, to be honest. That's just too much to go into.
Okay.
So I see the comments on Grange. I just want everyone to know Grange sits courtside talking to Bobby Masai like every day.
Yo, he literally said in the first segment he was talking to Masai when James Jones pulled up.
Yeah.
Like,
and then they disappeared. That's we talk about made man, but that's really a made man.
No, Grange puts in work, man. I think everybody knows this.
Actually, the only thing I wanted to follow up on, because I didn't want to take this away from what Grange was reporting in the first half, was just like, for me, the question of, like, for example, with the Gary thing, when you look at the decision to either re-sign a player or move them, I think the key for me is the player going to net you a bigger return on their new deal than they would at this current moment? You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, for example, right now, OG Anunoby's making $17, $18 million. He's got another year on his contract at that same number. There's tons of teams interested in him. Would you be able to get more for OG right now versus when you re-sign OG for what it's going to be like $35 million on his next contract, or at least 30? Okay. And are you going to be able to move him for more at that time? Same thing for Gary right now. And that's where when Grange reported in his piece that Gary is going to get you a protected first right now, or like maybe 2 seconds.
That's not very appealing.
That's not a lot as compared to if you re-sign him to a longer-term deal with some more term. I think you can get more out of that on top of the fact that you actually get the player and the production. That's why the Raptors have really operated in this way. Even when they, for example, re-signed Terrence Ross back in the day for that deal, it was like, okay, I don't know if T. Ross like really, really is going to be a long-term piece. However, it would have made more sense to re-sign Terrence back in the day to that 3-4 year deal that he got, and then ultimately flip that into Serge Ibaka versus flipping him before they signed that contract, which wouldn't have been much. Probably the same kind of deal, maybe a protective first 2 seconds kind of thing. They did the same thing with JV as well. Obviously, they moved him up into Marc Gasol. And of course, that was a different time because that was more of a championship mentality. But that's the question you got to ask yourself. Is the next contract that the player is going to sign going to net you a bigger return versus what you can do right now?
Yeah, essentially what you're saying is you have to look at this from an asset management standpoint as well.
Sure,
Like, are you trading these players? And I know people like sometimes don't want to hear like players being discussed in this way, but like that's kind of just the framework finances of the league. And it's like, I mean, I think at the start of the season, if I told you that, Gary was going to be, open to a deal in the 20 million range, that's a whole different discussion than the whole conversation that we had about him probably being, leaving after this season. And I think it's a really good point. You could even go back to, and I know a lot of other GMs do this, but when Masai was in Denver, he did this with some of his players too. I remember he signed JaVale McGee to a huge deal, and I think he was dealt shortly after as well.
Like 1 year into the deal.
Yeah. So like there's obviously been examples
I think
of
he
that.
did it with Nene as well.
Oh damn. Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other thing that we didn't get to ask Grange, and I guess I could just ask you too, is like with OG, like so much talk about like wanting that bigger role, right? The high usage and stuff. But then when I look at the thing I can't make sense of is, okay, sure, maybe he does, want to go somewhere else where, he can have this bigger role or whatever. But I look at all the teams right now that that would make sense for him, like Memphis, like Phoenix. I think Grange mentioned Denver as a potential dark horse.
Indiana is my personal dark horse on this one.
But you go to those teams, like you're going to slot in as a secondary guy on offense.
Yeah, no, we're talking about most of those cases, playoff teams who are looking for him to bring a 3-and-D style of skill set. And that's not to say that he will only 3-and-D, but like 90% of that role will be that.
So that's the thing I'm trying to sort out is like, okay, if he does, it is coming from his side that he does want to move on and go to a new situation. It's not like these situations is going to give him this bigger role.
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, I think the more involved you are with winning, the bigger your contract gets regardless.
No,
Like, you
that's
could
fair.
do the same thing, but for a more winning organization, you'll make more money.
I think that point is fair. But I'm just
Yeah.
saying I don't see his role changing that much on any of these new teams.
Again, I don't want to. I definitely don't want to rehash this that much because I really, really like OG. But it's like all the individual like shot creation metrics. It's really poor. Whether that's like his points per play in isolation is like one of the worst in the league for many years running now. His like running pick and roll, which is very rare for him. It's not a very high number. He doesn't set guys up that much either. He has more turnovers than assists. This is the second time in his career he's had that now in a season, and usually it's closer to a 1-on-1 ratio. So there are things, and of course, like I think for a stretch there, and I was tracking this early in the season. I feel like I don't know. I kind of felt bad tracking the start of the season, but I was like, hey, this is a bit of a problem that OG turns it over 1 in every 6 drives.
Yeah, that was a big problem at the start of the season. I think it was very noticeable.
But I mean,
We've seen it,
my
though,
point is that like for contenders who are looking to add that piece, they are not looking to add a 0.60 points per possession play on ISOs. You know, they're looking to add the fact that he's a very, very good knockdown 3-point shooter in the corners, less so at the top of the floor, but he can definitely knock those down too. And the fact that he might just genuinely be the most versatile defender in the NBA.
No, I have no doubts.
That's why prospective GMs, you got to pay 3 first-round picks or more. That's all.
And they can't be all protected, top 16 and all that stuff. Like the Knicks are saying. Yeah, I'm just like, trust me, like putting him on Denver, like just picturing him with like Aaron Gordon defending on the perimeter. Or in Memphis, you know, think about putting him on that front court.
Man. Phoenix, I mean, again,
with Bridges as well.
Him and Bridges together, man, that'd be tough.
Yeah, but no, it's just interesting to me. And it's funny to me, and I get it's like just human nature, these guys like at this age wanting that bigger role. But you look at the demand that's out there for OG already. The fact that he's just this elite 3-and-D guy, he's going to get that money. That's the other thing for me.
Yeah.
But
and he's not like 3-and-D the way like, and no disrespect to Danny Green, right? But this is not like we're asking him to be Danny Green, right? He's more involved than that.
Yeah.
You know?
But I get it. Anyways. Also, it's hard to take any comments out of context when you say, 15 words.
Well, I mean, when you're asked flat out, right, like, hey,
so here's what he said. If there's anything to the rumors, Grange asked if there's anything to rumors that you want out of Toronto, and he said, quote, no, it is what it is. Yeah. What there's no context there.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyways.
Fair enough.
What else? A friend of the program, Mo DeKeel, did message yesterday.
Right.
Because at the start of the season, I'm sure you remember, listeners might remember, he did suggest that the Raptors could explore trading OG Anunoby. So he just wants an on-air apology if that happens. Because apparently Raptors fans were giving him a really hard time.
It feels like they're exploring, aren't they? They're taking phone calls.
Yeah, so he's already right about that.
Well, I mean, it is what it is on that one.
Wow, this guy just pulled an OG response.
Yeah.
Anyways, there's also this which NBA fans are the most stressed watching their team? There's a research
me
recently. Yeah, well, they apparently did not take you into account, but they did take 70. This company analyzed 75,000 tweets.
That's not enough. That's one day on Raptors Twitter
for negative sentiment. And I don't even know if they put the Raptors in this because I'm surprised they're not even in the top 10.
Yeah, hit me. Who's on the top of the list?
Miami is number 1.
Okay.
I'm not really familiar with Miami hitter Twitter's game. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
The Knicks are next.
That makes sense.
The Warriors, so they must have had Andy Liu on there for sure.
Man. Yeah, for sure.
76ers make sense to me.
Yep.
And then the rest, I don't know. Like, how many Wizards are next? Like,
Bro,
how many?
Who is not stressing the Wizards, man?
How many
like,
Wizards
your
fans
team is
are
mid.
there?
How could you be stressed when you know your team is mid?
Yo, they literally have the mid 3, man. They have the best mid 3 in the league.
I mean, look, listen, they're better than the Raptors in the standings right now, but that team is mid, and you knew it.
That's tough. Yeah, you got the Bulls, Hawks, Nets, Nuggets, Timberwolves. I don't know. When I think of sad or stressed fan bases, I do think the Raptors really do stand out to me, though.
I think a couple of things with the Raptors thing. I think, number one, because of their success, not just with the championship, but even the 10 years before this, like this whole 10-year stretch since Masai took over, we're just used to winning all the time. We're used to not just winning, but like good vibes. We're very rarely do we see the Raptors, at the focal point of all the trade rumors, and we don't really think about, oh, this guy dislikes this guy, whatever, right? Like we don't have to question all that. We had a really sheltered existence. And now it's like this season hits, and I think it's a really jarring feeling for a lot of people.
Yeah.
At least when it happened in Tampa, it was like, whatever, right? They're not even here. We could just ignore it. Okay. They're playing Aaron Baines at 3 at some points. We can ignore it. Okay.
Oh, man.
But like, when you have that sort of like experienced recently and then you hit adversity, it's tough. Like if you're a rich person and you like actually have to like, have some austerity in your life, like that's going to feel a lot harder than when you came to this country with nothing and then have some austerity. It'd be like, all right, that's just life, but you move
It's
through
true
it.
though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the difference between you and me.
Banter pod tomorrow.
Oh, I can't wait.
Tomorrow
The only positive Raptors content will be coming out tomorrow.
Yeah, I
The
don't
heat
know.
will be delivered.
Yeah, what do you want
Derek,
to talk
book
about
the
the banter
studio
pod? I
for
don't-
tomorrow for us, please. We're telling you live on air. Book it for like 5 hours. All right. Yeah, he's literally getting to work right now. But yeah, we will have that banter pod for you.
I don't even know what you want to talk about. You seem really excited.
No,
about
there's
it.
just been a lot going on in our lives, man.
You really? There's been nothing going on.
No,
in
I
my
can't
life.
wait. I'm looking at the topics. I can't wait, man. Shout out to the X, man. You'll
Yeah.
know soon.
Shouts to the X. I don't know if we didn't touch on this on Monday. So Kawhi did mention there was a reporting over the weekend that Kawhi Leonard has made it clear to the Clippers front office that he would welcome a point guard addition.
Yeah.
And 2 former Raptors.
Jeremy Lin.
Kyle Lowry
Jordan
and
Lloyd? Nope.
and Fred VanVleet are on his short list of targets. Yeah.
Yeah. So this guy really just wanted to keep playing for the Raptors, but in Los Angeles.
No, he literally wanted Masai to move Toronto to LA. Like,
I'm a little surprised they didn't want to poach Masai or Bobby or Nick or any of those guys.
yeah, you think they tried?
Alex McKechnie.
This is the other thing. I mean, I'm sure we're gonna have Grange on again next week.
In fact, I've already committed to that.
Possibly every day.
Yeah.
But I really want to know, and I don't know if he knows this, and maybe we can ask Bobby, if when he comes on the show, like, how does the dynamic work with Bobby and Masai when it comes to like trades and stuff? You know what I mean? Like, is Bobby running point on these things and then filtering things through to Masai? Are they taking like, their own responsibilities, talking to different teams? I'm really curious because like seems like Bobby's been way more hands-on the last couple of years.
I mean, that makes sense. That makes
Right.
sense.
But now you
Bobby
see
ultimately
obviously
works for Masai.
Yeah, but now you see obviously Masai having these conversations.
Yeah, of course.
And we saw over the summer too, Masai and
Listen, they're
Sean
both very
Marks.
actively involved. Clearly, they worked really well as a partnership. But it's kind of like you and me, like you have these plans for the show, and you're like, hey, let's talk to this guy, this guy, this guy. Here's my plan.
Yeah.
And if I say I don't want to talk to them, we're not going to talk to them. It's like that. No,
Have you
no.
rejected guests before?
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah, Banter Pod.
But no, I mean seriously though, I think look, that's the thing too. I trust them to make the right decision. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
they've shown us over the past literally
Yes.
like 10 years now that they're to be trusted in this sort of process. That's not to say they'll hit on everything. And to be honest, it wasn't like they've had a lot of home runs recently. Although they did draft a rookie of the year, which definitely helps.
Right.
And even the Precious for Kyle Lowry thing looks pretty damn good. I'm really excited about Precious.
Yeah, and they got that young out of it too. Like it's a little bonus.
That one is like that's like a C. That's a C. I see that as an extension of the Kawhi trade almost. So
No,
it's
but
like
that's a little,
here
but
you
that's
go.
a
Here's an
little
extra
throw-in
first.
coupon at the end.
Yeah,
like,
here's Malachi Branham. Here's another Malachi for you. But no, seriously though, I think you trust them to make the right decision here. And listen, if they got to make the hard decision,
yeah,
I think they're also the kind of people that can sell it as well.
No, they can. And I think the other thing Raptors fans are got to brace for too, they're also happy just walking away if they're not happy with what's on the table, right?
That's kind of what they showed with the Kyle Lowry thing. Because I think people try to like lowball them. Like they're always like, can I give you George Hill and Matisse Thybulle? And Masai was like, can you just not? How about this? How about you don't get Kyle Lowry? And how about you watch Ben Simmons run point guard for you in Game 7 of the conference finals? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or not in conference finals, sorry, semifinals. Because the
semis.
Sixers haven't made the conference finals since AI was hot.
The Kings have made it before them. But
Damn.
anyways.
Is that true? That is true.
Yeah.
Damn.
Shouts to the beam. And now it's time for Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. It's a whole new game. Michael Grange at his hotel, and the Raptors are going to be heading into Utah tonight. The Jazz are -3 favorites. A reminder, the game is on Sportsnet and on Fan 590, and you can hear Will Lou on
Oh, that
the
means I'm
React
going
Pod
live. Yeah, all right.
afterwards.
Yeah.
The Jazz are 17-9 at home this season. They've won 5 of their last 7. Fred has scored 30-plus points in 2 of his last 3 meetings against Utah. Some might remember his empty arena masterpiece last season.
Some might remember, some might not, because I believe, not to take anything away from that performance, which was really good, he played like a perfect third quarter.
Yeah.
But it was like Elijah Hughes was like the main opponent, and like Rudy
That's
Gay,
right. The Jazz did not bring
Eric Pascal.
Yeah, the Jazz did not bring their squad to the
No.
empty arena. Raptors are 2-5 without OG in the lineup this season. They're shooting an NBA worst 31.3% from 3 on the road since November 12th. The Jazz are -3 tonight. Will, who do you like?
Utah is just a hard place for the Raptors to play. It's also a really hard one to predict because obviously in recent years the Jazz have been pretty consistent with the core of like Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and some like essentially wings around them who can shoot some threes and that was very difficult for the Raptors to guard. But we've seen the Raptors go into Utah and come up with some results. One of my favorite games from that championship defense season was right before the
final
pandemic hit,
game,
right? Where it was like. Serge had like a big double against them. The Raptors won, down the stretch there. OG fought Rudy Gobert for some reason, and then we were all concerned because Rudy was patient zero basically in North America. So
and then you flew back, went bowling with Norm, I believe.
Yeah, and then it was a concern there, but whatever. Everything's ultimately
that
fine,
was a great win. That was a great win.
Yeah, it's hard to predict because we haven't really seen the Raptors play this edition of the Jazz. I mean, I remember when I was on the Amalfi Coast, I was watching Raptors Jazz, but that was preseason. Right. And they actually played each other quite even. So, I mean, this is a hard one to predict. I think, generally speaking, the Raptors have just not been good on the road, and that Utah is playing better. And even though that their team has been dramatically reshaped, that they've still been quite strong. So, I expect a close game, but I ultimately do think that Utah will pull it out in the end.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Raptors. I just think they're just going to alternate wins and losses.
I wouldn't mind. I mean,
during this trip.
This would be I don't know if they're going to save themselves or anything like that, but
no, I think that ship. Like, what are they going to do these next 3 games to really change anything? I think at this point, the front office is just having the conversations. Like what's really going to. Anyways, the Raptors.
Can we?
Yes,
producers, Dave Leader. I know there's no way you're watching this right now.
Yeah, shouts to the leader.
Shouts to the leader. Can you make sure we have an ISO cam on Masai from when he walks off into the tunnel with Danny Ainge?
Yeah. Or just when he's looking real miserable in the stand.
Oh, you know what? Actually, the reaction shots are really good.
That was the most unflattering look.
Listen, I don't even want to see a replay of the Raptors and the plays that they make. I just want to see Masai and Bobby on maybe a box and one. One of those little things on the side. Simulcast.
Yeah. So that was Between the Lines, brought to you by Bet Rivers. It's a whole new game. Happy Hump Day, everybody.
There we go. All right. Well, that does it for us today. I've been your host, Will Lou, and you've been listening to The Raptors Show on the Sportsnet Radio Network. Make sure you find The Raptors Show wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe, and please rate and review the show. By the way, we're charting a lot right now. I mean, we always chart a lot, but we're definitely charting a lot.
What does it mean to chart a lot? Like we're just charting high? Or?
Nah, we're always the #1 basketball pod in Canada.
What's charting a lot?
No, it's just us talking about trades every single day. People are really tuning in for it. So
cool.
Anyway, continue to rate, review, subscribe. Thanks to Michael Grange for hopping on the program. Producer and co-host Alex Wong. Appreciate you. Shouts to the Rizzler, our board producer Derek Brandale, and Danielle Gauthier for helping us with the YouTube stream. And we will talk to you tomorrow.